You're listening to Nostalgia Club, the podcast where we look back on our favorite childhood stories and revisit them as adults. At least one of us hasn't read or watched these series, so we also get a first-timer's opinion. Spoiler alert, we will be discussing storylines and future events beyond the first books and episodes, so proceed with caution. Hello, and welcome back to Nostalgia Club. My name is Jino, and I'm here with...
Victoria.
And Michael.
And today we're covering the hit 2000 movie by Walt Disney Pictures, Dinosaur.
Wow!
Great score by James Newton Howard. That's what I
will
like.
say the score is really good.
The score is one of the highlights of this movie. There are not many others. Hello, Jino here. Just a quick note. This episode discusses many scientific theories about dinosaur behavior and the world they lived in. If you're knowledgeable on the subject, you might notice that a lot of the things I claim to know about are wrong. Why? Because when I learned about dinosaurs, it was the mid-2000s, and our understanding of the prehistoric world has changed pretty dramatically since then. In short, my information is out of date. Also, I have a terrible memory. Therefore, you will hear me pop back in and correct some of the more glaring inaccuracies as we go. Now, on to the show.
I was very impressed with a number of animation feats.
Yes, this movie was released in the year 2000, and it holds up okay.
Okay.
It's not bad. It's not terrible.
The
There are some
texturing-
moments... Yeah,
I did not like the dinosaur lips.
the dinosaur lips were bad.
I think there's a moment where the main character, Aladar, makes some sort of kissing movement or like a spitting movement, and his lips move like how a human's lips move when they spit, and I was like, I don't like that.
It doesn't help that he's like doing it right at the camera.
Yeah.
And you're like,
an
whoa.
extreme close-up of his face.
But Victoria, how else will you know who the main characters are? Everyone knows main characters have lips. That's how you tell them apart.
Yeah. So like,
I hated it.
for anyone who knows they're dinosaurs, Aladar and most of the relevant dinosaur characters in this movie are Iguanodons, which are sort of quadrupedal dinosaurs, herbivores. It's like a very basic image of a dinosaur when you think of it.
They are famous for being one of the first dinosaurs to be... I think they were one of the first dinosaurs to be discovered, and then they were one of the first dinosaurs to have a public image created of them that was broadcast to the public.
Yes.
That was very wrong.
Yes.
It was very incorrect. It looked literally like a giant iguana with a horn on its nose.
Yeah.
And they later learned that horn was actually a thumb spike, which is super cool. So they are, in some ways, the original platonic ideal of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
I do kind of wish that they had explained what kind of dinosaur he was at the beginning, because I did not know until I Googled it. I was just like, wow, he's a dinosaur. What kind of dinosaur? I know he's not a Carnotaur, because they make that very obvious at the beginning, but I have no idea what dinosaur he is.
He speaks English.
Yes.
It's very interesting the way this movie handles its characters and who speaks and who does not.
Yes.
And it's strange in the sense that you get like a lot of on-screen dinosaurs that will just make dinosaur sounds and are not relevant to the plot. They don't have any lines. They just make dinosaur sounds. And then you get characters that are central roles and they will speak full-on human language, communicate with each other, and then intermittently make dinosaur cries. And it's weirdly, for me, it kind of worked. Maybe that's just a holdover of the fact that I watched this in theaters in the year 2000 when I was like 5 or 6, and just seeing like state-of-the-art visually rendered dinosaurs on what are often real-life backdrops that they put CG animated characters on, just for that time, was an incredible blend that was very different than Walking with Dinosaurs, which also a fan favorite for anyone who likes dinosaurs. And when I was 5 and 6, oh, that took me by storm. I was like, oh, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I know Gino's shared that he was also very taken with Dinosaur at a young age.
Yeah, Dinosaur was a hit for me. Michael and I watched this movie when we were very young. Victoria has watched it for the first time in the last few days. I loved and continue to love dinosaurs. I consumed dinosaur media. Like if I didn't, I would die. I memorized hundreds of different dinosaur species. There was a local paleontologist celebrities that I got the autographs of.
Wow.
I was really
Local paleontologist celebrities.
That's not a string of words you hear often.
Yeah.
I had to ask my mom because I forgot who it was. But it was Robert T. Backer, who is at the Natural Science Museum in Houston. He's actually credited as one of the, I don't know if founder is the right word, but he helped bring about the dinosaur renaissance when he proposed that dinosaurs were not slow, lumbering, boring, giant, dumb lizards, but they were actually fast and smart and warm-blooded. They stood upright and they went zoom and they were super cool. And he helped propagate this idea and brought about all sorts of media starting in the 60s and culminating with Jurassic Park and Walking with Dinosaurs and now Dinosaur in the year 2000. So I have his autograph somewhere and some
really
books he
cool.
wrote. So I was really into dinosaurs.
That's super cool.
Even as a kid, I didn't like the lips. The lips are bad. It's all the regular dinosaurs, they look pretty dinosaur-like. The main characters, it's like a human face was kind of molded onto their face.
It
I'm just not a
occupies a
fan.
weird territory.
Uncanny Valley a little bit.
Yeah.
So I agree. I completely agree, Victoria. The lips are bad.
I feel like the lips might have been okay if they didn't put such strong emphasis on them, like Michael said, where it's an extreme close-up of the characters saying words. Maybe I could have looked past it, but it was very jarring in certain shots in particular.
Yeah. I will say there are aspects of the character's expressions, like dinosaur lips aside, there are a host of lemurs in this film that act as the adoptive parents to our main character, Aladar, the iguanodon. Aladar, when he was an egg, basically chaos befalls the sort of area where he was residing as an egg in a nest, and through various
A Rube Goldberg of dinosaurs.
through a Rube Goldberg of dinosaurs, this little egg containing egg Aladar gets whisked away to some island within sight of the main continental coastline. We assume it's a continent, but onto an island that just has lemurs on it.
Some sort of Madagascar-ish place.
Yeah.
And
Somehow he survives. I know that the movie sets it up to be he's about to hatch.
Yeah.
So he's a fully formed dinosaur who's about to hatch and just happens to not hatch until he lands in this lemur island. But I don't know. It was kind of hard to suspend disbelief after he falls into the ocean, gets picked up by a flying dinosaur, then is fought over by multiple flying dinosaurs in the middle of a thunderstorm, and then falls to the ground. Well, falls into a tree near the ground. And the egg doesn't crack? I don't know about that one. I was waiting for the splat, and then I'd be like, oh, it broke, but he's about to hatch anyway, so it's fine. But it was like, nope, it just lands in a tree.
Would have been a short movie.
Yeah.
I will be that guy and say that there are no flying dinosaurs.
Oh,
That is
they're
just
flying
thank you,
things.
Gino.
It is a flying lizard that just happened to be around at the same time as the dinosaurs, but they are not related.
Okay. See,
Same with all the swimming lizards. None of those are dinosaurs either. They just happen to be
what's
there.
the classification for a dinosaur? Aren't pterodactyls dinosaurs?
No. So dinosaur, I believe the specific thing that sets them apart is their hip joint. It is how they stand.
Oh,
So there are two
interesting.
types of dinosaurs. They have two different hip joint kind of configurations. You have those dinosaurs who are more low to the ground, like four-legged dinosaurs who are kind of more squat, but they
A
still
lot of herbivores.
Yeah, but their
Yeah.
legs are still straight. They're not like crocodiles where they're out. They're
Yeah.
underneath their body supporting their weight.
Okay.
And then you have theropods who are up and they have two legs, and so their legs are kind of configured a little differently. And they're closer to birds in today. So it's the legs that set them apart. Flying reptiles like pteranodons and pterodactyls and stuff, they come from a different lineage. They just kind of happen to evolve at the same time, and they are very, very old. And the same thing with the plesiosaurs and the mosasaurs. They're just a coincidental separate lineage that also happen to be around. The conditions were right for them to flourish for a very, very long time. At the same time,
Millions of years.
millions of years. And then they got hit with a big rock But it's okay because they found the promised land or whatever. They're fine, I guess. I don't know.
Land Before Time parallels.
This movie takes a lot of inspiration from previous dinosaur media. There are some shots that are very Jurassic Park-y. There are some shots in dinosaur choices that are very Walking with Dinosaurs-y. The plot is very Land Before Time-y. It's not a very original movie. The plot's pretty simple. The writing isn't great. The characters are there.
The whole plot is Aladar, the iguanodon, grows up with a family of lemurs and feels slightly like an outsider, but he's pretty well accepted into the family, so it's okay. And there's a few comments made by basically his lemur mom, who's like, wow, I wish you could find love too, with someone who's not a lemur.
Yeah, I'm glad they don't try to go there. They know he's a different species. We're not going to touch that.
And he's like, well, that would be nice, but I'm happy with my family here. And then the meteorite strikes.
The second he says, I'm happy.
They waste no time.
I wasn't sure how much I was like on board with this. The writing was passable in terms of just like how characters converse. It's like, yeah, this is dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
This is fine. This could be so much worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's telling me everything I need to know. And it's fine. And I'm getting personality or some of it from some of these characters. Some characters' personalities are just not good. I'm thinking of one lemur in particular who is just like, he's got like all this frayed hair and something's wrong with him. Because there's the whole thing for these lemurs is that like when we flash forward all those years and Aladar's like an adult or whatever, it's like on the cusp of this like bonding ceremony. It's basically
It's a mating ritual.
It's a mating ritual.
They straight up call it a mating ritual.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they had a euphemism
No,
for it.
it's
Nope.
They blatantly say it's time for the mating ritual, and then they have like the group of girl lemurs and the group of boy lemurs all separated into groups, and then like Pleo, who's Aladar's lemur mom, gives advice to the girl lemurs, and then the grandpa
Yar.
Yar
I remember.
gives advice to the boy lemurs, and then they do this weird dance thing. And there's
Yeah.
like a song, and
Aladar's like surrogate brother.
yeah,
I forget his name.
Zini.
Zini.
Zini is Pleo's brother.
Oh, okay.
That's not very clear in the movie.
It's so
Yeah.
unclear.
It's so unclear.
All I know is that Yar is Pleo's father.
Yeah.
Yar's
But-
the old one.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's two middle
From
ones,
there,
and there's a baby.
it's very unclear. I thought Zini was the son at some point
Or
because
a cousin or something.
or cousin, but anyways,
He doesn't need to be there.
the point is all the other monkeys immediately pair up, and Zini is the only one left. And then Yar says something about, oh, there's still one bachelor left in the
On the island.
clan or whatever.
Something. But the thing is, like, Zini, is it Zini or Ziti?
Zini.
They also pronounce his name differently
Okay.
throughout the movie.
Zini.
Zini. When we first meet Zini, he's like practicing pickup lines. And they're like real bad, but he's kind of like, the way he's animated is like, he's a little droopy. And he's just like practicing pickup lines by himself, like at the ocean. And he's like, oh yeah, that's good. And I'm like, this is so weird.
What? And then
Okay.
he doesn't use them.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because the whole mating ceremony, the mating ritual is all of these lemurs.
Nonverbal.
It's nonverbal. They're all just like swinging through the vines on the underside of this very wide-brimmed bough of a tree at the top of this island. And I will say, this is a moment I actually kind of responded to in the sense that there's nothing intrinsically like narratively compelling about this ritual, and there's certainly nothing compelling about Zini or Zini, but I was very fascinated watching this movie from 2000s, doing 2000s animation, having to animate a bunch of lemurs. Not only just lemurs existing, which there's not a lot of fur necessarily to disguise like the moment of a lot of articulation, because you got like long-limbed forelegs with all the fingers and a tail that's got a different kind of flexing capacity to these longer limbs. And on top of just animating a slew of these lemurs, they're having to do it while they're holding onto vines, like vines that are each moving at a different rate and kind of pendulum force depending on what each lemur is doing on that vine. And the way a lemur specifically holds onto a vine, like the weird way a lemur contorts itself and the way that a vine bends in reaction to that displacement of weight is so specific. And I realized watching that sequence, like, they're actually doing a really impressive job, not with just one lemur, but with a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
This movie does some really, I think, nice things with its lighting.
Its framing and its lighting were pretty good.
Technically, it's so impressive, particularly when you consider the time. And discounting the narrative, watching a bunch of like lemurs with some rather understated James Newton Howard kind of like world music genre score in the background, swinging across these vines where in the background is just kind of this lambescent, soft kind of pink lavender dusk twilight sky. You can like see for miles beyond because again, we're at the top of this island that's just got ocean around it. And there's something very like serene about that, where I was just watching this, like I could see that they're doing a good job of just the play by play, moment by moment. They're doing the thing. The clouds in the background felt appropriate in the sense that you can see they're kind of faded and blurry from like being very far away in the atmosphere. There was just this sense of depth and scope that I think you even see in the opening during the Rube Goldberg dinosaur sequence.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't seen a lot of dinosaur media that has made me think of the world as incredibly massive, populated with massive but still very small in the broad scope dinosaurs. Because there are sequences where we're sweeping over. It's real footage of the world. I think it was filmed South America, I think.
The Big Canyon reminds me of Ethiopia.
Okay.
There's a shot like that in Walking with Dinosaurs, or Walking with Beasts, that is in Ethiopia, that canyon.
Yeah. It's large sweeping natural shots, and you get dinosaurs that have been digitally inserted, and you can tell, especially nowadays. Back in the day, it looked better than most anything you had ever seen.
Yeah.
And so you get this sense of like, the world is huge.
Yeah.
This is huge, and there are large dinosaurs, but the world is also massive around them. And so the juxtaposition of these lemurs having a very, in more ways than one, intimate, very small scoped moment atop a tall island where you can see the depth of the world in a way for miles was a nice juxtaposition for me. And then they do 180-degree tonal flip. And I really like the lead up to this sequence in particular, where after mating ceremony's done and Zinni has appropriately not found a mate.
Here's the thing. I just want to jump in real quick.
You're good,
but they really set him up for failure here.
Yeah.
Because every other monkey gets to pair up. There's not even a couple stragglers where it's like, oh, they didn't find a mate this time. It's literally every single monkey except for Zinni gets a mate. If that's the case, unless they're like polyamorous monkeys, that means that
it kind of
there would always be one leftover monkey.
I think you're right. The implication is that this mating ceremony, the pairing of lemurs, is not permanent. It is like a one-time thing because Yar, the father, we never know his partner. Pleo, the mom lemur, has a kid between Rube Goldberg egg dinosaur hatch and the start of like the real plot. And that kid just kind of pops out of nowhere. So like, I feel like in monkey culture, you kind of just do your thing and then you're kind of just like.
But then why is it such a big deal that Zinni's the only bachelor left? I don't know.
I think it's because Zinni's never been not a bachelor.
I guess.
But
I don't know. I
it's-
feel kind of bad for him. His
means
animation
well.
is disconcerting, and so is his personality.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to fill a specific role for him in the movie,
Trying
think
to
you're
be,
right.
He was the comedic relief.
but they don't end up using him very much. He kind of vanishes from the plot about like 1/3 of the way in, and then he just
pretty
never shows back up until the very end for a one-off joke.
He pretty much only pops up in the movie whenever anything romantic happens.
And then he's gross
Yeah.
and
It's
not
not good.
helpful.
Because it's like at the beginning when he's doing his pickup lines, and then he kind of fades into the background, and then he only pops up whenever he's trying to wingman Aladar. So
I think does that happen multiple times or is that just once?
it happens a few times. He makes like some snide comments
Yeah.
about like, ooh, your girlfriend. And I was like, they made eye contact
Yeah.
for 5 seconds.
So Zinni stays a bachelor at the top of the movie. Turns out it doesn't matter because
Everyone dies.
everyone dies. I do like the lead up to the sequence because we get to see twilight or the end of twilight turn to dusk, turn to night. And it happens very gradually. And as it does, as the sky goes from like pink to a darker lavender, we see these streaks of light across the sky, and they just kind of enter the side of the frame at first. Just kind of, they're not really the focus. Just these kind of purple, white streaks.
Yeah. It's a beautiful scene.
It's a beautiful scene.
And the tension building is really effective.
It's great. Everyone's looking up at them, and they have the appropriate reaction you would expect of just kind of wide, blank-faced, like, I don't know what this is. Like, I have no idea how to feel about it, but it's clearly, like, significant in some way. Like, this is like nothing I have ever seen. I don't know how to feel about this.
And it doesn't seem threatening at first either, because it does look very beautiful.
Yeah.
So the monkeys are like, that's interesting.
They look more like shooting stars at the beginning.
Yeah, it's like this meteor shower, and it's really beautiful when they hit the horizon. They're arcing across the sky, and then they come down. Like, you're used to seeing meteor showers arcing across the sky and just sort of vanishing, but these ones actually kind of touch down, and it's like this rain of white, purple meteors, these light streaks that just eventually are just vertical, and they're coming down in greater and greater volume into the ocean. And you can see, because they're so huge, this is what betrays their true size, is you can see the reflections on the ocean, a similar size. And you're like, oh, that's actually pretty big. And they're very far off, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And the lemurs start to feel a little off. The sky is darkening as it's getting close to night. Great tension building.
Birds are scattering.
Pleo's like, I don't get a good feeling about this. Yar sniffs the air and's like, something's wrong. Pleo asks, like, where's my random child that appeared during the time skip? And Aladar's like, she's up in the tree. And as he looks up, a bright white light, this like roving spotlight, just soars over the island. And we look up, and the James Newton Howard score soars with this motif that he had been slowly building in a much softer, kind of quizzical, neutral way at the start of that sequence. And it soars with horns and the strings, and you see this giant meteor, something like the size of a small mountain, trailing fire and debris, just tumble over this island, impossibly large. And that's when you realize, uh-oh, this isn't good. And it crosses over their sky and then lands out of sight on the horizon. And when it does, they do something really great with the light here, where as it's been going closer to night, this meteor becomes our single big light source. And as it's crossing the sky, you can see that light source sort of like casting shadows across the clouds, the few clouds it's passing. And when it finally lands, all of the light, as we cross tonight, vanishes. It vanishes with the disappearance of that meteor's light. And once it hits the ocean, the music dies. The sound dies. We just see a bright flash of light, and then suddenly the sky is pitch black. There's not a star in the sky. And this cross between a nuclear bomb and like a Krakatoa eruption just bursts onto the screen. And we see this shockwave, like if you've ever seen YouTube videos of like a volcano erupting, and you can see like the air shockwave like hit the clouds. It's like the only trace of its visibility. I think there's like a video of people on a boat witnessing it. And then you hear the shockwave as it reaches them. And that's what happens in this movie. Everything's quiet after that thing hits. And it takes the sound a good 5 to 7 seconds to reach them. And the shockwave hits, it knocks all the lemurs off their feet, and then the second shockwave hits and it knocks them off again. And you see the stages of this thing exploding as debris and regolith from the earth spew into the atmosphere. And there's something about the darkness of it, the fact that it takes away all the light and turns into this like multi-stage erupting fireball. Frankly, in that moment, I was kind of breathless. Didn't remember what that scene looked like. And I was really impressed by it in a way I was not expecting at all. Like most dinosaur media that portrays a cataclysmic meteoric event, typically the Chicxulub impactor, they're doing it from like a Walking with Dinosaurs nature documentary perspective. And there's an appropriate amount of awe you feel watching it. But there's not a lot of dinosaur media that depicts an event like that, something that is akin to a mass extinction event, from a perspective that is intentionally cinematic first. And rooted in the perspective of someone on the ground who is anthropomorphized in terms of their intelligence and perspective. And so I was very impressed with that. Gets a little weird when the explosion actually hits the island and you can see some of like almost like chroma keyed explosion effects over natural scenery. And you're like, yeah, I feel like I've used those in YouTube videos before.
Yeah. That moment is the peak of the movie, and it never really gets better.
Yeah.
They peak early, but they put a lot of time and energy into that moment, and they sell it really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment on, it's kind of an apocalypse movie.
Yeah.
As much as the writers and the directors play loosey-goosey with all the dinosaurs and the reality of it all and the fact that none of them should all really be there together, that moment, I think, is really, really excellent filmmaking.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth watching and it's worth remembering. And then the movie's brown for the rest of it.
I know, like Michael said, there's so many beautiful shots of the natural scenery, and then it's just decimated for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And from then on, it's walking through sand and
Rocks.
sand and more sand.
Yeah.
From then on, Aladar takes what remains of his family, which is basically just a couple lemurs, on his back, and they go off in search of... I don't know if they're really searching for other
I think they're just
animals.
trying to get
They're just
away.
trying to get away. But they run into a group of... Are they velociraptors?
Those are velociraptors,
Okay,
yes.
cool. I know that much.
And they're proper size velociraptors
Yeah.
Anatomically correct velociraptors, at least for the time.
for
Yeah.
the time.
They run into a group of velociraptors. The velociraptors chase them into another dinosaur herd.
Yeah.
And they travel with that dinosaur herd for the rest of the movie. The herd is heading towards what they call the nesting grounds. And the main source of conflict is there's the main herd leader named Kron, or Crone?
I think it's Crone,
Okay.
which is an interesting name.
Also
And-
an iguanodon,
Yes.
but like bigger.
Bigger iguanodon with slightly different features.
I looked it up, and there are conflicting accounts of what he actually is.
But his
Oh.
sister is an iguanodon.
Yeah. He looks just like a fun iguanodon.
Yeah.
And his second in command, Bruton, might be a different species entirely.
Oh, okay.
Either a Muttabuttasaurus, which is like an iguanodon with like an inflating, deflating horn nose. Wikipedia says he might be an Altirhinus, which also has this kind of big nose cavity that is theorized could make like trumpet sounds,
Oh.
like a bellowing trumpet sounds.
Interesting.
But-
Because Kron has like the big nose.
Yeah.
Bruton kind of has a big nose as well.
But then it doesn't really explain that like his sister doesn't.
I think it's just one of those like, we'll stick with reality as far as we want.
None
Yeah,
of the-
because they
none
do
of
have
these-
to
yeah.
basically make him look like big, scary, mean dinosaur.
Yeah. Iguanodons with beaks, nah. Iguanodons with lips.
Lips. Yeah, none of these dinosaurs should be in the same time and place together. It doesn't make any sense for
Yeah.
them to be
Some
all
of them,
here.
I think.
Some of them, yeah, but some of them are not from the same time period. They're not from the same place.
Yeah.
It's fine, though. It's a movie. It's whatever.
So Aladar kind of has some conflict with Crone because Crone is just like driving the herd to move faster and faster, but as a result, he's leaving behind some of the elderly dinosaurs, some of the children. But his philosophy is if they're left behind, they're just meant to kind of survival of the fittest. They weren't meant to survive this. And Aladar strongly disagrees with that, and he does his best to try and help those who are straggling at the back of the pack. Basically, Crone is the broken star of the movie.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Bringing it back.
bringing it back to episode 1. And then Aladar makes eye contact with Crone's sister, Nira. And of course, they fall in love, I guess.
You know what I hate? And I didn't notice this until the last shots of the movie. Nira is pink and Aladar's blue.
Yeah.
And it's very subtle. But when I realized that, I got
That's
so
true.
mad.
She has
Yeah.
highlights of pink on her skin
Scales?
scales.
Whatever.
She in certain
On
light,
her
she just
texture.
has a pink hue, and he has a blue hue, and it's not obvious when they're just like by themselves. They just look like iguanodons.
Mhm.
But when you put them side by side, suddenly
It's
it becomes very
obvious.
clear.
Ah.
Oh, it's a boy iguanodon and a girl iguanodon.
Yeah.
Because pink and blue is you gotta establish the genders. Ugh.
Yeah. That's when I hit the point of, okay, I have to accept this because it's a 2000s movie and this is what every 2000 movies does. But
Yeah.
I hate it.
Standard color coding.
Yeah.
Standard look, the
Standard
hero and
Romance plotline where all they do is make eye contact and they must like each other because reasons.
They spend a little time together. It is very thin.
It's very thin. I think to the writer's credit, they do take an effort to show Aladar's positive traits in a way where
That's
he's
true.
not like,
Yeah.
he never actively like shows off or pursues any sort of relationship.
Yeah.
He has his own goals
Yeah.
and motives, and he's concentrating on those. And the writers do try to take some time to show him as being a good person.
Yeah. And Nira's character also is not solely focused on her being the love interest either. She actually tries to help Crone see Aladar's side, tries to say,
mediate.
yes, tries to say like, hey, maybe we shouldn't leave all the children and elderly dinosaurs to die.
Yeah, she's caught up in politics.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
no reason for them to get together.
Yeah.
They can...
Aside from it being the apocalypse.
Yeah.
That's true, I guess.
But she's in like survival mode because when Aladar's like, why? So Crone is pretty much just like allowing people like stragglers to die. Like, is that how it goes? Like, are you okay with that? And her explanation is basically like, I haven't really been able to think about it because
That's true. A lot's happening.
Yeah. One thing I do like about Aladar as a character is that a lot of the time, especially if we're talking about a kid's movie, if we have a hero and or heroine that are central to the plot and they have to interact with the kid, they're going to be good with the kid. It's just something that has to happen for the plot / to show that they're like, oh, look, it's a decent person. Oh, hey, it's a scared kid. And, you know, whatever Disney character, hero or heroine will, you know, squat down and be like, hey, kid, oh, you don't have to be scared. Come on out. And the kid like creeps out and they're like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh, look, our main character is a good person.
Yeah.
And it's just like kind of utilitarian, like emotionally, it's sort of hollow, it feels like. I don't have any ready examples, but take my word for it. For Aladar, it's kind of like that, but it goes a little farther than that. It's treated as like a legitimate character trait for Aladar that he is distinctly good with kids. It was just done differently than you normally see. He strikes me as the person who is good with kids or is recognized as good with kids because he has like at least a handful of ready responses to when someone goes, you like kids, don't you? Or like, you're good with kids, aren't you? He just like whips out a response like, they're a little chewy for my taste. Like that is the response of a person who is used to being told that and is just like now sarcastic about it.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. And like when these two little orphaned iguanodons are like hiding in a cave because they just got like traumatized by Crone, one of the little lemurs is trying to get them out, doing like the traditional like, hey, come on out, it's fine. And they're just like hiding. And Aladar comes up and he's very nonchalant. What's going on? Aren't you thirsty? Like, you don't have to be scared of this like little thing. She's just a hairball. Like, come on, go get some water. And he like walks away and he lets them set their own pace, which is something Crone didn't do. That's like a little bit of the detail that I liked in terms of like portraying Aladar as someone who is distinctly good with people.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs.
He has no negative qualities.
No.
There is no character growth because there doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
He's
That's
grown.
true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only character change he goes through is at the start, he doesn't have a girlfriend, and at the end, he has a girlfriend.
Yeah, it's
Even Pleo says, wow, I wish you could find someone nice for you. And then at the end he does. And I was like, I guess that's the whole story.
Well, even then, I don't know if they intended it to be like subtext where he says one thing but he means another. But the way the line read sort of implied for me is that when Pleo tells him that and his response is like, what more could I want? He actually sounds very honest when he's like, I'm literally fine. Like, I live on an island and it's great. And there's people who like me and I like them. And I'm good. So.
Yeah. Well, in a way, that made the romance between Aladar and Nira less believable to me because he really doesn't care at the beginning. But it's also, I guess it's because he's never met another iguanodon. I don't know. Anyways, at one point, since we were talking about Zinni, he catcalls Nira.
Yeah.
I hated that.
No.
He's a bad character.
He's a bad
so
character.
bad.
He doesn't help.
Aladar may not have any negative traits, but being friends with Zinni,
Aladar is an enabler.
he was just straight up catcalling her.
And she responds, I would say appropriately, but she's honestly much more reserved.
Yeah.
Then she just like, and that kid's is a jerkosaurus. And I'm like, honestly, Nira, you should just go off.
Yeah.
like, it's the apocalypse. Who's going to hold you accountable?
I also really hated the awkward flirting that they had when they were drinking water.
Yeah, that was like, oh, I bumped my giant dinosaur hand against your giant dinosaur. Oops, sorry, giant dinosaur heads bumped
and then they're
into
like
each other.
blushing, and I was just, get me out of here. But one character I did think was interesting and kind of subverted my expectations was the character of Bruton, which at the beginning, anytime Crone gives an order or something, Bruton responds kind of grumpily and seems like he doesn't really agree. And so I thought one of the things that was going to happen was that Bruton would kind of betray Crone or maybe like stage kind of a coup and take over leadership of the herd.
We're still on Warrior Cats.
Yeah.
Warrior Cats mode.
Yeah, but in the end, it just turns out that Bruton gets injured. He's left behind by Crone. He doesn't agree with Crone's method of just pushing the herd forward without actually knowing how far the nesting grounds are or even if it exists.
They've been there before.
He knows they exist, but he's not
he
foreseeing the obstacles in their way. And when they meet an obstacle, instead of saying, okay, we got to figure out how to get around this or how to deal with this, he just says, we'll just keep walking.
Okay.
And then everyone's like, we're going to die.
Because there was one part where they reached where it was supposed to be a water stop. I think I got confused and thought that was supposed to be where the nesting grounds were. And then they were disappointed. And so I was like, does he actually not know where it is? Anyways, it's not much explanation.
They really don't explain the situation about anything very well. For a lot of the movie, it's unclear whether the meteorite was a localized effect or it was a worldwide effect, because there are some lines where Crone says like, oh, for the next 3 days, there will be no water. And he says it like this is how it's always been. So the implication is that this march to the nesting grounds has always been through this kind of like irradiated wasteland type desert. And they're just kind of used to it.
It's pretty vague. I think the implication, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's only later that they establish, oh, this is unusual.
Yeah. When the Carnotaurs, the big bipedal, speechless, just here to eat characters, theropods.
Yeah.
When it's revealed that they're following them, Bruton comes up because he just got like wounded pretty hard by one. And he's like, Crone, Carnotaurs, they're on our trail. And Crone's like, what? Crone's like, what do you mean? They never come this far north. And then I think Bruton says like, they must have fled from the fireball. So I think it's like that meteor impact like did hardcore screw like their portion of the world at least.
Yeah.
But also that area they were traversing was in general a desert even beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that establishment only comes like halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
So for a while, it's kind of unclear, which I guess makes sense from an Aladar perspective because he doesn't know anything about the outside world. So he's not sure if this is normal or not.
For Aladar not being where they could have had a character explain to him like...
Yeah, one of the elderly dinosaurs could have said, oh, we've traveled this route before. I don't remember it being this hard or something. I don't know. Something like that.
Something like that.
Bruton ends up sacrificing himself for Aladar and his family and also the other elderly dinosaurs that he's traveling with, which I felt that was a pretty good character arc for him. He's probably one of the only characters who really makes any changes in this movie. But it was unexpected for me personally because I guess I was just on the whole, he's going to betray Crone and take over type of thing.
He fights the Carnotaurs in a cave, which is another one of the more visually compelling, I think, scenes. In the previous scene, they're like, there's no water, and then it starts raining, but like they don't acknowledge that. But anyway, but the rain comes down, they're hiding in a cave, we have a Carnotaur slowly poke its head through a curtain of rain. It's cinematic for the time. Obviously, you can see the weird water textures on the 3D models, but you have these wet Carnotaurs like forcing their way into the cave. You have like almost a very vertical confrontation with Bruton at the top, trying to bat these Carnotaurs down towards the entrance of the cave. It's well choreographed and it's well designed. Again, the disparity between the people in charge of the art and the people in charge of the story and the characters becomes clear in these moments.
Well, I think the development, because I was doing a little research, the idea, I'm taking this from an article on sci-fi.com. I guess the original idea was an idea between Paul Verhoeven on the set of RoboCop and Phil Tippett, visual effects producer and animator Phil Tippett, who later went on to work on Jurassic Park when things with dinosaurs started falling apart, because it took them a while to get it going. Like, again, this is a conversation that happened in 1986. So 15 years before Dinosaur became a movie. We were doing the scene where the ED-209 bracket in RoboCop end bracket falls down the stairs. We're sitting in this stairwell and everybody started, I can't say this word on the podcast, complaining about how there were no good movies made anymore. Sounds like a very similar conversation to what you hear all the time. It's an old conversation. And then Tippett says that he said, well, I have an idea for a movie about dinosaurs, and Verhoeven was instantly excited. I guess Verhoeven got super excited and has this quote here where he says, there could be meteors and the death of the dinosaurs and huge battles with geysers of blood. Because that's Paul Verhoeven.
Dang, I wish we got that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of the original development for the idea for Lion King, where it was supposed to be much more like natural and like a nature documentary and just kind of like violent and vicious. And then over time transitioned to anthropomorphized non-human characters.
Mm-hmm.
Lion King did it better. Dinosaur could have been worse, at least on the technical side.
That's the thesis statement for this movie, the viewing experience. It could have been worse.
Well, Dinosaur, I think, was a box office success, ultimately.
It was a huge hit, and it continues to be a huge hit. There was a toy line that I had, some of the toys. I had the two old dinosaurs. I can't remember their character names, but I had the Styracosaurus and the Brachiosaurus, who Brachiosauruses have been extinct for way long by the time these people are whatever.
They try to lampshade it. I think I'm using that term right. Where they're like, oh, she's the last of her kind.
But they show a bunch right before.
Yeah, you're right.
Brachiosaur is a Jurassic creature. KT extinction is way late Cretaceous. Brachiosaurs have been dead for so long.
I don't think this is the KT extinction, though.
Well, it's something.
It's something. No, if the meteor that hit was the KT extinction event, we wouldn't have a movie.
Yeah.
All of those dinosaurs would be gone.
Yeah.
They're too close to the impact site.
Also, there wouldn't be an eggland. What is it called? The
nesting grounds?
That would be gone.
Yeah. So when they got to the nesting grounds, I was like, is this like the Garden of Eden?
There's an
Implications.
argument to be made.
Yeah.
Religious metaphors.
Okay. Because I've just watched them travel through an entire wasteland after a meteor hit the Earth. And like Jino said, it's very unclear, but in my head, I was thinking, okay, the entire Earth has been hit or affected by this meteor. So they finally get to the nesting grounds, and it's like this perfect, beautiful paradise with a lake and greenery and trees and
it's the
hills.
Great Valley from The Land Before Time.
Which, can I say, and I know they were constrained by what locations they could shoot and their VFX at the time, but there was so much grass in that shot. Grass did not exist.
Yeah.
No, grass did exist. For a long time, it was believed that grass evolved alongside grazing mammals long after the dinosaurs died. But in 2005, they found evidence proving that dinosaurs did actually eat grass. Not a lot of it. It wasn't as common as it is today, but enough to show up in the fossil record. So, tone it down, me.
And then at the end, this was also very confusing because at the end, Aladar tries to help the rest of the herd get to the quote-unquote promised land.
Right, because when they're in the cave, Bruton creates a cave in to stop the Carnotaurs from getting Aladar and his friends. They go to the other side of the cave and find the nesting grounds there.
Yes. Then they find out that what's blocking the normal entrance to the nesting grounds is a giant kind of rock slide wall thing. And so Aladar rushes out. He tells Crone, listen, you guys can't get through this wall, but I know another way. Crone, being kind of egotistical, is like, no.
Crone being irredeemable.
Yeah.
He sees everything Aladar says as a challenge to his leadership, even when it is so blatantly life-saving advice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are people like that.
It's true. Crone is like, no, we can just climb the rock wall. And he tries to make some of the small iguanodons climb the wall. Then the last Carnotaur attacks. The other dinosaurs run. Crone sneaks off on his own while Aladar is fighting the Carnotaur to try to scale the wall himself.
Well, there's like a theme of, it's a very easy kid theme of like, don't be selfish and survival of the fittest your way through life.
Yeah.
Everyone work together. And we get the proof of concept with Bruton earlier when Bruton's like, you mean my fate isn't to die? Honestly, it feels a little anime when I think about it. Like super high-minded, like, you mean my fate isn't to suffer for my whole life? You mean you'll be my friend? Kind of thing.
Crone ends up having to fight the Carnotaur on his own.
I do like how they show that, like, that's predator behavior. Like,
Yeah.
predators go for the lone creature.
Because Aladar's whole thing is like, listen, if we stick together, the Carnotaur can't attack all of us at once. So we have more safety in numbers, whereas Kron sneaks off by himself.
Yeah.
Aladar and Nira try to help. The final battle is like, not bad. It's dramatic. You don't know who's going to live or survive.
It's limited by dinosaur anatomy.
Yeah.
My attacks are tail hit and headbutt. Bonk, bonk, bonk,
Yeah,
bonk.
It feels, not that we know how freaking dinosaurs fought necessarily. Well, we know some things, some impressive things, but as far as imagining how these creatures would fight, part of me liked how reserved it was. You're not just seeing like crazy, like stab, bite. It's
That's
like
true. There's
tail
only
whip.
really one big bite. Even the Carnotaur is not fighting with teeth. It's all like tail butts and head butts.
Yeah, I think that's true to real life
Yeah.
as well. When animals decide to get into a conflict, that's always, most usually always last resort.
Mm.
Because animals, they're not stupid. They know that one injury could mean their death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's a broken arm, a broken tail, a blinded eye, they need everything at their disposal to survive. And so dinosaurs fighting in real life would supposedly be two dinosaurs kind of squaring each other down, one act of violence, and then whoever got injured retreats. Because, again, like they don't want to injure themselves. That's death.
What ends up happening is the Carnotaur is kind of pushed off a cliff, almost drags Aladar down with him, but Aladar manages to climb his way back up. But unfortunately, Kron has sustained too much injury, so he dies. And Nira's like sad about it, but then they go off to the nesting grounds and suddenly they have a baby.
I think
I
it's
was
supposed to be a
confused.
time skip.
Oh, there's definitely a time skip.
So I literally replayed it because I was so confused. I was like, okay, there has to be a time skip because how else would they lay so many eggs all of a sudden? But then suddenly one of the lemurs in the background is like, look who I found.
Oh, yeah.
And so then it's
Oh,
confusing
yeah.
because it seems like
they just got there.
They just got there.
Maybe those other lemurs that Zinni found just got there. Maybe that's what it is.
But then I feel like the line should have been, look who just arrived, or surprise, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
It
think
was
it's
just-
a bad,
it
that's a
was
bad
bad.
moment.
Probably just a plot hole.
I also generally dislike that the baby dinosaurs look like human babies, but are vaguely dinosaur shaped.
They're a little too pink.
I did not like it.
Yeah.
They have like the same kind of anatomy of a small baby laying on its back, but they also have dinosaur limbs, and it's very disconcerting.
The humanification of these dinosaurs translated to the toy line that I talked about earlier. I owned two of the toys, and I hated their faces. Even as a child, I hated their faces. But they were the only Styracosaurs that I had. So I had to use them for my dinosaur fights
Yeah.
or whatever I was doing.
It's okay. I've been there. It's dinosaur fights.
Yeah, it's dinosaur fights.
A little bit of nature documentary role play, but I mean, but you got, cool creatures with horns and claws and teeth and stuff. So
And
when
they
you're
go,
a kid,
"Ah!"
yeah.
What you said earlier about the eggs reminding you of potatoes, that's accurate.
The
There is
first shot of the movie, or one of the first shots, is of the nest of eggs on the ground, and the eggs look so brown and not really detailed that they just look like potatoes.
Yeah, I think that's a side effect of a very famous fossilized nest of iguanodon eggs. Oh, I'm such a nerd. Okay, the fossilized nest I'm referring to here was a cast of a Maiasaura nest, not an iguanodon nest. There used to be one in the Houston Museum of Natural Science. I'm not sure if it's still there after the big renovation they did a few years ago, but it was definitely a Maiasaura nest. When you just have a bunch of rocks that are shaped like dinosaur eggs, they do kind of look like potatoes.
Yeah.
Realistically, dinosaur eggs would probably have some kind of texture or pigment on them that makes them look more interesting.
Uh-huh.
But the animators probably like, that's what they look like. Potatoes.
In other shots where the egg is more of a focus and there's more lighting on the egg, it looks more like an egg with more color details, more kind of like egg line details, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that first shot, I was just like, they're potatoes.
Yeah. It does feel like a direct reference to that specific
Yeah.
fossil.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There were several instances in the movie where I recognized references to either other nature documentaries or other famous-ish dinosaur finds that a broader audience might be aware of. Like the little raptor-like thing that steals the egg in the beginning of the movie, Aladar's egg, is called an oviraptor. They were found, the most famous skeleton of an oviraptor was found in Mongolia, and it looked like it was stealing from a nest. So they called it an oviraptor, an egg thief.
Oh,
but
interesting.
It turns out those were its own eggs. It was protecting the eggs.
Aw.
But the assumption had stuck, and so now they have this reputation of egg thieves, when it's possible that they were just
herbivores, insectivores, perhaps?
Probably insectivores.
Yeah.
I've seen too many images of an oviraptor fighting, oh man, what are they called?
Protoceratops.
Protoceratops, yeah. Like a triceratops with no horns, and they're really small and cute. They're kind of like pygmy elephants a little bit. Oviraptors fighting protoceratops in like this vast Mongolian wasteland. I'm like, that's probably not what it was like. The fossil I'm referring to here is called Fighting Dinosaurs, and is not of an oviraptor. It is of a protoceratops battling a velociraptor. Oviraptors did exist in the same time and place as protoceratops and velociraptor, but the image I am thinking of is specifically a velociraptor, not an oviraptor, because oviraptors probably didn't fight protoceratops. But what do I know?
Although I do wonder, if they were insectivores, I wonder if there was a case of an oviraptor stealing an egg. I could imagine it.
Probably. I mean, like, we don't think of squirrels eating birds, but they do that.
Yeah.
But, like,
That's
it's not what
true.
they're known for. Like, one oviraptor, like, goes, I'll have an egg today. And all of humanity's like, egg thief! I have branded you egg thief. And the
Let
oviraptor's
this
like,
be
"Oh."
a lesson to you, audience. You may think, this is a toxic lesson, don't actually take this to heart, but you may think, look, if I do one little mistake here today, we're all human. The universe isn't going to remember me. There's countless people across this world. Who's going to remember this weird, random, cringe thing I did in high school where I came to school dressed as a Naruto character and
Don't
Naruto
do this
ran
to
into
me,
class?
Michael.
Well, guess what? 65 million years later, maybe the world will know you just for that.
Sentient squids are like, yes, Naruto, their famous religious figure. See, Victoria dressed as Naruto or something. I don't know.
It is, on the grander sense, the movie delivers a little theme at the end that really has nothing to do with the theme of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
With the narrator like, blah, 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 the passage of time. We can only hope that, our time here will be in some way remembered. And I'm like,
Which
that's
is
not
not
what
the message at the beginning.
It's so random.
The beginning message was about, you could come from humble beginnings and still become something great. So I expected Aladar to become something great, which
He kind of does.
Yes, he kind of does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The two book-ending messages have nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. The ending message actually made me think that was the KT explosion because it's so ominous. Like, we can only hope that we survive another season. Like, they're not going to survive another season.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, at some point, the sun will be blocked out by dust and they will die.
I'm like 100% sure that wasn't, I mean, maybe they intended it to be. Realistically, it wouldn't have been, because if it was the KT explosion event, not only would everything within that area been like full on incinerated, but there would already be dust in the air. And within like a handful of hours, the whole world would be on fire. That's what the KT explosion did. It created this sheet of like molten earth ejecta that just like swept across the planet, not only blocking out the sun, but igniting everything on fire.
But it's okay because then the world would freeze. And that's the opposite of fire. So
Fire and ice.
it's fine.
Warrior cats.
Warrior cats. Honestly, it's a miracle anything survived at all.
Well, I thought it was a little bit of a stretch that even Aladar and his family survived, but whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
should be dead.
Yeah.
That water should have been boiling.
Yeah.
But it's
like-
okay, because they had to make it to the promised
The
land.
movie had to happen.
The movie had to happen.
Yeah. Anyways.
That's how the producers sounded when they were like working through this movie for like the umpteenth year. A movie had to happen. A movie had to happen.
It made a ton of money. It made so much money. I think there's a ride at Walt Disney World that's still dinosaur themed.
Probably.
Like this movie themed. I'm surprised they didn't make a sequel. I guess they didn't want to because it was too much work and Jurassic Park was
the
too
problem
big.
is the sequel probably would have been the actual, what is it, the KT explosion? Yeah. I don't know. I guess they wanted to leave the audience with they made it to the nesting grounds, so maybe they will survive the ultimate explosion. I don't know why I'm using this voice. Very fascinating movie.
From that same sci-fi article, I mean, you get the vibe of the story of dinosaurs' development from the whole thing, but there's a little bit that I think kind of sums up, in a certain way, my like meta-textual, if that's the right phrase, takeaway from this movie, just in like the external sense. Okay, here's a quote. At one point during production, Kathleen Kennedy stopped an executive working on the project and asked them why they were making the movie. The executive didn't have a good answer. And that, like, it says like piles of scripts were developed. Like at a certain point, a movie stops being a story and just becomes a process of creating a product.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we hear about stories of a movie like no longer being about a story and just being about creating a project, it's often in the context of they sunk cost fallacy. They should have known when enough was enough because the movie ended up bombing. But I feel like that story, like that kind of sequence of events of this movie lingered in production hell for ever and ever, went through tons of iterations of the story, all kinds of like getting bandied about to different creatives before finally just flopping on to the box office operating table, like already half dead, and then being like, there, it's done. Honestly, that feels like a case for a lot of movies whose results are extremely varied across the spectrum and is in no way... I mean, is it perhaps an indication that things aren't great behind the scenes, that this shouldn't happen? But at the same time, it's like, you don't know. A movie could come out that has gone through 15 years of developmental chaos, and it could make, box office gangbusters, even if it's just, one of the movies of the year 2000, even if it isn't really maintained in the hearts and minds of many except as like a cult classic. It could bomb entirely. It could do exceptionally well. It could be Pirates of the Caribbean, or it could be give me a disaster. Somebody give me a disaster.
A movie that didn't do well?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the thing. We don't remember. Morbius.
Was it efficient, or was it bandied about for 15 years?
I don't know.
Because that's the big thing. That's my takeaway. You just don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Like Mad Max 4, a movie that I think shares a similar visual palette, and the characters go on a similar journey to this movie, also flopped around in production hell for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then came out and blew everyone's pants off.
I guess people just really like apocalyptic movies where you go on a journey.
Go on a journey. Except in Mad Max, they turned around and went back.
Oh.
Or in Dinosaur,
They stayed.
What? Okay, you describing that big weird rock slide that blocked the entrance of the nesting grounds for no reason got me thinking about it. That rock slide makes no sense. There's nothing for it looks less of a rock slide.
Where did the rocks come from?
Yeah. They just kind of
we don't know what the
appeared
mountain
from
looked
the
like
ground.
before. There could have been two giant mountain crests if that was a valley. And then when the meteor hit, it caused successive earthquakes that sent the thing down.
Maybe. It just looks too perfect.
It exists for the plot.
It looks like a
guess.
perfectly constructed rock gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just patch this hole in the wall.
Yeah.
You're supposed to knock 3 times with your staff and speak friend and enter. Tok, tok, tok. No, we'll climb it. Kron, no!
I feel like I must brush up on my, I almost said dragon. I feel like I must brush up on my dinosaur knowledge.
Being interested in dinosaurs is really fun because it's always changing.
Yeah.
And
true.
no one ever agrees about what the truth is.
Yeah.
Which is how science is. That's how science should be, is that it's a large group of people who are all trying to investigate their own theories. And at any point, any one of them could be right. But people are always advancing and learning new things, and that's what's exciting. Science is never set in stone. The only thing set in stone are these dinosaurs, because they're dead. They had their chance, and they lost.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest, the extent of my dinosaur knowledge is from watching Power Rangers Dino Thunder. So.
Yeah. I've seen an episode of that.
And of course, I've been to museums and stuff, but I think I read somewhere that honestly, the dinosaurs could have been covered in feathers or had extra wings and stuff that we don't know about because they just deteriorated over time.
So the theory,
not the wings, but
that would have been wild if they just had extra limbs poking out
They
of
had
it.
wings.
All
but-
dinosaurs were flying.
Yeah.
when they were supposed to have feathers at first, that was heavily mocked. Like dinosaurs with feathers, ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then they started finding fossils of dinosaurs with feathers. And then people went way overboard. And they were like, T-Rex was covered in feathers. Triceratops was covered in feathers. Stegosaurus was covered in feathers. Brachiosaurus was covered in feathers. And then they were like, no.
They looked like birds of paradise. They were giant parade floats.
And then someone was like, they were not covered in they were probably many dinosaurs with some feathers.
Yeah.
There was not all dinosaurs just like walking around like they're in a giant fur coat, dazzling the competition. Like, so it goes in waves. But it is interesting to see like artwork from that time where people were like, feathers!
Yeah.
Where you have these like giant chicken-looking T-Rexes who look so unthreatening, just like bobbing around with these big puff balls. And then you have like this furry like Ankylosaurus just like, yes, I'm warm. Like,
I think the main thing is just the fact that there's only so much we can tell about what they look like based on fossils, because the bone structure could be different than what it actually looked like, because like muscles and skin and stuff deteriorate. So who's to say what the actual shape of a T-Rex looked like?
Who's to say all dinosaurs weren't absolutely shredded?
They did find, I believe, one mummified, I think it was a Maiasaurus. They found one mummified dinosaur. They've actually found several mummified dinosaurs. I don't know where I got Maiasaura from. I couldn't find any evidence that that's been discovered, but they found a Nodosaur, which is a kind of armored, turtle-ish looking dinosaur, a relative of the Ankylosaurus, if you are aware. They've also found an Edmontosaur. Look it up. I'm not a scientist. And it looked fairly...
How was it mummified? Who mummified it? Oh, like, sorry, I don't know. No, I don't know why I imagined actual cloth wrappings of a dinosaur. And then I realized, it was probably mummified by, like...
Natural process.
Yeah.
That would have been what? Like, guys, we found a dinosaur with a shirt. I don't know what to do with this. Everyone's just like...
The day that happens, the entire scientific community just explodes.
Why does this shirt have a print that says, I love Venus? Why is it in English? Oh, no.
The tag says made in what will become China? What does this mean? We carbon dated it and it's 1 billion years old.
I'm just thinking of that, like, the call is coming from in the house. We carbon dated it and it's from today. That just means it's a hoax. No, it's something much deeper.
It's from the future.
Well, watch the first 10 minutes of Dinosaur and then stop.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
After the egg falls in the forest, if you want to see the giant meteor explosion, you can watch another 10 minutes.
That's pretty good. The score is bomb. It's so good.
It's great.
The lips are inexcusable.
Very distressing.
I'll say, you know what? They were given an order and they did their darndest.
Yep.
I was at various times impressed at some of the subtlety in facial expressions across various characters of various species. Got to be no easy task to make a dinosaur look like it's contemplating its relationship with its brother and its duty to a large group of people in just a flit of the eyes and a tilt of the head. But they did it.
Yeah.
They sure did.
I will say this movie does feel like an animation test. Like how far can we stretch the technology? Also, they totally modeled dinosaurs late in production and just kind of plopped them into the herd.
Yeah.
They added some, I don't know exactly what they're called, but they added some Gallimimus looking guys that are like the thin little like wobbly neck chicken looking guys.
Yeah.
They kind of just plopped those in there halfway in the movie and they're like, they won't notice. And these like tiny little like Parasaurolophus looking dudes, they were like, they're small, we'll just throw them in there. Johnny modeled them and he worked real hard. They won't know. We'll just toss them in there. And the herd just gets a little bigger with every scene. You're like, where are these people coming from? How did they get here?
Maybe they joined the herd like how Alador and his family joined.
Maybe.
That's true.
But we just never see it happen.
Man.
So
Yeah.
it really looks like they're kind of just like wandering in like,
The point is nothing in this movie is explained.
And when we were kids, we didn't need it to be.
Yeah.
Dinosaur on screen. Go rar. And honestly, I like the rars.
Rars are good.
The sound design, delicious, I think.
It's fun to me how many dinosaur roars in this movie were the same as dinosaur roars in Walking with Dinosaurs. They were released very close together. So it can be assumed that they didn't exactly like take from each other. They just kind of assumed everything sounded similar to it.
Yeah.
Like their sound designers had a similar thought process, which I think is fun.
Unless there was a secret sound designer meeting where they were like, okay, so we're both working on dinosaur projects. What should they sound like?
Honestly, that could have happened.
Yeah.
It's totally feasible.
Sound designers will find each other.
Yeah. I do like the idea of, hey, what do you got? I'll give you what I got if you give me what you got. We
Okay,
can,
genuinely, yeah.
Like, we have no time. Just
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
share assets.
It's like, okay, you work on the Iguanodon and I'll work on the Carnotaur, okay?
Teamwork. It's the message of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, we're all going to die one day.
And also, you can come from humble beginnings.
Well, that's been us for Dinosaur.
Until next time, if you see a big rock flying through the air, yeah, there's nothing you can do.
Oh, gosh.
Until next time, don't catcall the female iguanodon.
Don't support your male friends if they're being assholes toward women. Even
Yeah.
if you're a great guy, that does not, like, that implicates you in their actions and you need to say something.
Yeah.
And that's
So
the
just
true meaning of dinosaurs.
Leave them to die on your monkey island when it gets torched by the massive nuclear explosion. You don't need them.
Until next time, don't put lips on your dinosaurs.
Yeah!
Yes, please do not ever do that again.
Please don't. Oh, I hate the lips. They're bad.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Nostalgia Club. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on Twitter @_Nostalgia Club and on Instagram @Nostalgia Club Podcast. Leave a comment, give us a rating, and subscribe. You can also send us an email with your suggestions for what we should review next at nostalgiaclubpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello.
Hi, Casey. How's it going?
Oh boy. It's been a long morning. That's nonstop meetings. What's going on?
Well, I wanted to call you to ask if you've watched the hit 2000s movie Dinosaur.
Yes. I weirdly enough, I actually I think at that time I was working in a theater that was showing it.
Ooh, so did you watch it a lot of times?
I mean, a couple times. It was interesting because it's like that CG in the real world thing didn't exactly work out too well. But I mean, it's very forgettable.
Well, since you've forgotten what it's about, I'm just going to tell you again to refresh your memory, because you've always wanted to remember what this movie was about.
I would love to know what it's about. I did forget. It's about the end of the world, right?
Well, it's ambiguous. So basically, the story of Dinosaur is about an iguanodon named Aladar who, as a baby, as an egg, was picked up by another flying reptile and dropped into an island full of lemurs. So he was raised by lemurs. And then once he gets older, one day a meteor hits the Earth. It's kind of vague whether it hits the whole Earth or if it just hits some of the Earth. But anyways, he and his family of lemurs escape. They manage to find another group of dinosaurs who are trying to find their way to the nesting grounds, which is basically like almost a Garden of Eden of dinosaurs. There's some conflict between Aladar and Kron, who leads the dinosaurs. But most of the movie is just about walking and running away from the Carnotaurs. There's also some romance between Aladar and another female iguanodon, because of course there is. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Isn't this the land before time? Isn't it really what that's they're trying to get to the Great Valley?
Yeah, basically.
It's a regurgitation of that. Also, what's weird is that movie is that remember the Carnosaurs. I don't think they actually talked, but all the other animals like dinosaurs did.
Yeah, the Carnotaurs only like growl and like roar, and then the other dinosaurs will talk, but some of them don't talk, so that's also vague. And also, the dinosaurs have lips, Casey.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very, very true.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, Casey.
Of course, no problem.
Talk to you later.